area and around the world. We've interviewed a wide range of guests in the show, some of the world's leading people in their field, sports, psychology, you name it. We've interviewed people in this show. It's been really fascinating. Today we have a very fascinating guest and a very fascinating topic. Really, really interesting sort of topic today, and an interesting, very fascinating guest as well. We have a Sunday Times bestseller, CJ Tudor. Welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Hiya, thank you very much for having me.
No, it's great to have you on board. Just looking at the research that's been commissioned by Paramount, CJ, to celebrate the launch of the new supernatural film, Burning Girls, it suggests that 7 in 10 Brits are convinced that ghosts are real. What's your take on the sort of research? And I must admit, I was a little bit surprised that there's a lot more people who kind of, believe that ghosts are real, but who am I to say there isn't?
I wasn't that surprised that so many people are believers in the supernatural or believe that they have seen a ghost. I think we've sort of got kind of a long tradition of kind of like ghost stories and the supernatural in this country. I think, we've got every sort of village or town, I think, has its own superstitions and particular ghosts that, are relevant to that area. And I think it's kind of sort of part of sort of our culture in a way. And I think it's not necessarily that everybody definitely believes, but I think a lot of people would like to believe as well. A lot of people think they've seen stuff, and I'm fairly open-minded. I'm a slight skeptic actually, but some people have such convincing stories about things they've seen or experienced that can't perhaps necessarily be explained. So I think perhaps we want to believe there's other stuff out there that hasn't got a rational explanation sometimes. And I think particularly this time of year, coming up to Halloween, it is that time of year, isn't it, for sort of ghost stories and spookiness and scares. So I wasn't that surprised to find there were so many people who do believe in the supernatural and ghosts.
Absolutely. No, I have an open mind as well, CJ. I think that it's one of them, and certainly whenever I watch a supernatural or a scary film, it definitely gets me on the edge of my seat. Absolutely. And I'm really looking forward to the to the Burning Girls as well, the 6 episodes. And can you give us a bit of an insight into the book? I'm sure a lot of our listeners have read the book or are familiar with the series that's sort of going to launch, but can you give us a bit of an insight into it in terms of like what was your inspiration and what yours? Yeah,
sure. So the book actually I was inspired when we moved from Nottingham to a small village in East Sussex, and it's quite a small insular sort of little village with it's got a picturesque. It had this very creepy chapel that I used to walk past every day, which was kind of the inspiration for the book, which is set in a small village in East Sussex, a fictional village of Chapel Croft. And it's a village with a very dark and macabre history. 500 years ago in this village, 8 Protestant martyrs were burnt at the stake during Queen Mary's purge of the Protestants, and 2 of the young girls are supposed to haunt the chapel, the burning girls of the title. But then it's got more modern tragedies. 30 years ago, 2 teenage girls mysteriously disappeared from the village. And more recently, the local vicar killed himself, hanging himself in the chapel. So into this rather dark and creepy village come the new vicar, Reverend Jack Brooks, and her daughter Flo, and they're looking for a fresh start in the countryside in this small village. But they soon find it sort of anything but that. They're left this exorcism kit with a rather creepy message, other mysterious messages, and then start to see visions of the burning girls in the chapel. So they find themselves drawn into this village's dark history, and find that there are plenty of villagers with secrets to hide. And they kind of have to get to the bottom of this in a way to kind of save themselves. So it's part a psychological kind of horror story. I was influenced quite a lot by things like The Wicker Man, but it's also a small town mystery to get to the bottom of what links all these kind of dark and macabre secrets in the village's past. And we have a fantastic cast. Samantha Morton is playing the lead role of Reverend Jack Brooks. We have Ruby Stokes and Rupert Graves, Jack Roth, David Dawson. We have such a wonderful cast in it, and it's a truly creepy, mysterious show. I think kind of perfect for the Halloween season.
No, absolutely. I'm certainly looking forward to watching it, CJ, for sure. And it seems to sort of cover some really interesting themes, and sort of going back to the sort of research and people like believing that it's one of them really, isn't it? We can be skeptical, but to a certain degree, but no one really knows for sure, But, yeah, absolutely. And do you think that kind of creates the mystique behind the the series too, because obviously, you know, we just don't know. I mean, some of the whenever I watch supernatural films, I try and think of a scientific explanation, CJ, around, but then I'm thinking, well, maybe, you know, I'll put the bins out tomorrow morning type thing. I don't know if I want to go outside.
I'm very much like that.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think
so it's like walking through a graveyard at night? No, maybe not. You know.
Yeah. I'll give it a miss.
I think we all have that fear, don't we? I think, and like I said, I think every sort of village and town has its own kind of superstitions and stories about, you know, ghosts. Pretty much every town has a ghost walk, doesn't it? And stories of ghosts that are supposed to haunt certain buildings. And although sort of the ghosts are fictional in my story, a lot of the backstory about the burning of the martyrs and sort of the traditions of fireworks and bonfires to commemorate them is all based on fact. And so even though the burning girls are sort of an invention in the book, there are other ghost stories around this area. There's an abbey just down the road that's supposed to be haunted by ghosts called the Screaming Skulls. Two people who were, like, you know, locked up in the walls of the abbey. So I think there's this, you know, there's these traditions and superstitions and stories that are passed down. So yeah, I think there's that sort of open-mindedness that, you know, you never know what could perhaps be possible. But I think we also convince ourselves in a way, because we hand down these stories, don't we, and traditions of ghosts. So for some it's a bit of fun, but for some, you know, some people take it much more seriously.
No, absolutely, and you know, I think that the main thing is as well, it's an opportunity to sort of just engross ourselves into like a series. And I think it's sort of great. I think these certainly, you know, these are the type of series and films that sort of get me on the edge of the seat, and a lot of listeners, no doubt, as well. You know, they're fascinating. But I suppose on top of that, I mean, you've mentioned there some of the towns in the UK. I think that, you know, England's got some great towns, some really idyllic towns, and I certainly love to go visit them too. Do you think this will sort of do a little bit for, I'm not sure if the locals will, in different towns will be happy, but do you think this sort of does a bit for tourism too? Because I'm sort of drawn to a lot of towns in the UK. It's just so much history here, and they're just, you know, there's always a story to tell. And do you think that's going to have a bit of a knock-on effect as well for that?
It's interesting. I mean, we do have all our towns, villages have wonderful histories and stories and folklore and traditions, don't they? When we moved here to East Sussex, I mean, that was the inspiration for the book in a way. I started to research the history of the area, and a lot of our history is very dark and macabre as well, which is obviously perfect for a kind of dark, macabre thriller writer like me. And some of the show was actually filmed around this area, as well as other locations too. But interestingly, when I was writing the book, I was speaking to quite a few people, you know, friends who are in the village and stuff, and they were really happy to sort of tell me lots of stories about the village themselves. So, you know, hopefully they'll like the show as well, and they liked the book. So I haven't sort of offended people in the local area. That would be bad, obviously.
No, I'm sure that you know, they'll find it, you know, fascinating, and I sense it's not easy to sort of turn a book into a film or a series, and you know, obviously, I mean, I enjoy reading book as well, and watching series too. And what's your take on sort of? I know obviously you're you know, you're an expert writer, but in terms of trying to develop a book into a series, did you have any say in that as well, CJ? In terms of, like, you know, like did you give some guidance in that area as well? Because obviously, you know, you being the author, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously books and television or film are very, very different mediums. So we had lots of discussions, you know, with the directors and the producers before it sort of went to script stage about the book and how it was going to be done. And they asked me lots and lots of questions about the book, thoroughly interrogated me about it. So there was a lot of involvement there. But we had an absolutely wonderful scriptwriter, Hans Rosenfeld, who's been behind The Bridge and Marcella. So he's an expert in TV scripts. So I felt the book was in very, very safe hands. He totally got it and what we wanted to do with it. So I think you have to be a little bit hands off, and kind of, I was quite happy to go, I trust these people and they're the experts at what they do. I think if I tried to do it myself, I'd have perhaps tried to be too literal in taking the book, whereas I think you need someone who's an expert sort of visually with TV and film, and they've done an absolutely amazing job. I'm so pleased with the adaptation. And people can be quite protective about books too. If readers love a book, I'm the same. You know, it's going to be made into a television series or a film. If the cast isn't quite right, or they change things, People don't like that sometimes, but I've been thrilled with the adaptation, and so far the feedback from people who've seen it has been just phenomenal, which is great. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. And in terms of yourself, CJ, you sort of, the Chalkman Sunday Times bestseller, fascinating, the Taking of Annie Thorne, and obviously the other people and the Burning Girls. But in terms of yourself, I mean, can you give our listeners, know that a lot of them are familiar with your work and read your work? I mean, is there any insight in terms of sort of where you go from here, or are you just Well,
I'm always writing, always working on something else. So my latest book, The Drift, which is kind of a sort of a dystopian locked room mystery thriller, something slightly different again. That's out in paperback today, actually. So yeah, hopefully that will be a nice chilly read, a chiller for Christmas and winter coming up, which is great. And then I have a new book coming out next April as well, which is again another kind of small town mystery. Interesting, this one's set in Alaska. So again, I like to do something different with each book, but I think hopefully people who know my books kind of still know they're my stories. But I've never been interested in doing the same thing each time. So each book is kind of a standalone and slightly different. But I get to have a new playground with new characters and new stories each time.
Absolutely, and I really want to thank you for your time. See, it's been fascinating. And in terms of anyone sort of looking to tune in to the Burning Girls, are you able to maybe sort of signpost them like where they can sort of go? Yeah.
So you can watch it on Paramount Plus UK and Ireland. So if you've got Paramount Plus, you can stream it there. All the episodes, all 6 episodes there that you can binge straight away. If you have Sky and you've got the Sky Film movie package, you have Paramount Plus actually probably as part of that as well. So you can also get it there. Sign up to Paramount and you can stream it. So yeah, watch it. It's really good. Really creepy.
Absolutely. I'll definitely be watching it. I think it'll be one of those sort of binge weekend. If I start watching one of them, CG, I don't think I'll be able to sort of stop. I'll just need to watch all of them. But I really want to thank you for your time and best wishes. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much. Bye.